Juhi brought up a very interesting question, which is she said that she's seen dogs kind of calling other dogs to say, come with me. There seems to be a very specific way in which they communicate, hey, come with me. And so I was giving the example of dude trying to tell Chiru, come with me, and trying to take her to his house, which is like 2 roads away. So it's not just come with me for, let's go check out things together. It's also come with me, let's go get into trouble, right? Like, come that communication. It was not her acting independently, it was her wanting to communicate something to him. You got to come with me. And that intent got communicated quite well. It was very interesting because he looked up, he sees what she does, and then he takes off, and they both take off
Yeah.
and they go and chase. And I think it might be consistent with what we've been talking about in 101 also, with our shoulders. We saw that when we did our body language testing, right? We did a bunch of exercises where we tried to go and look at how dogs respond to our body language and things like that. So it was a combination of shoulders and eye contact, and it isn't a static signal. It's a very, very dynamic signal, right? Let's
Yeah.
move. I mean,
Yeah.
you're communicating, let's go. You're communicating the direction. You're saying, you're communicating intent and direction, and not just your intent. You're kind of telling them
Yeah.
consistent. Maybe we should observe them more to see how they do it so convincingly that
Yeah.
dogs see. How interesting, right? Dogs seem
Yeah.
more than willing to follow other dogs, but oh
Yeah.
God, how hard do we need to work to get them to follow us?
Thing. And the other way that I've seen dogs really, really calling, and I've sent that video to Sindoor and Juhi because it's so remarkable. We have a street dog who comes to the balcony, right? And she calls. I mean, she literally calls my dogs, and she doesn't bark. She doesn't, I don't know what kind of vocalization that is, right? But it's like a very distinct and unique vocalization that my dogs are immediately like, I'm not always in the balcony or I don't always hear it. So Snow especially will come running and be like, hey, you got to come check this. Like, there's something like, come here, basically, follow me. And when I go there, and then Lily's like, oh, good. Yeah. Can you let me in? The street dog is looking at us like, okay, can you come in? And it's crazy because it's so clear. Like anyone is able to understand what she's asking from us, right?
Yeah. So this one is calling, the other one is luring. So what yours the example that you're giving is almost luring, right? And luring, and with the intent to deceive, and that is just it's at a whole other level. So this is actually what we're going to talk about in the conclave as well, right? Because deception is a very interesting thing where you're kind like that you're doing something
Yeah. Yeah.
which like you said, there are layers to it. I don't want to put words that make it sound negative, because I think as human beings we tend to add so much judgment to a lot of this behavior. But this kind of so deception is not only it's known to happen in other animals, right? I think there are some very well documented examples, particularly in primatology, with okay, dogs are able to communicate this so beautifully with each other, and it's just so effective, right? Even a dog is able to deceive another dog, and it still seems to be kind of effective. And they're able to call us also pretty well. So at least as long as we're not encumbered by this kind of a world based on training, right? People who just work with street dogs and things like that, they seem to understand very well and clearly when they are being called. The one place where we fail consistently, though, are the most qualified of us trying to teach our dogs recall and ask our dogs to follow us. There, this communication completely seems to collapse. They're neither able to understand us nor are we able to express ourselves. It is not that they cannot follow. It is not, they're social beings. It's not that they do not want to follow. And there seems to be a way in which we can communicate. So all the tools are there. What are we missing? Why are we failing so badly? Is it because we're trying too hard? somebody to, and I think Anushri, you may have seen that in action with Chiru when, I was grieving and all of you guys were around, is
Yeah.
that when there were other people who came in who
Yeah.
could kind of take charge of the situation, she was like, my job's done. I'm
Yeah.
going to go and, take a break and go do my thing, like, like get a smoking break kind of a thing, right? Her sniffing
Yeah.
break in the garden.
And she would, right? She would go to the garden and hang out and watch the
Yeah.
pigeons and stuff. Yeah, I
Yeah.
remember that.
Yeah. So I think that's one thing that came up for me. So definitely I think observe. If I ask her to come back, and particularly if I see somebody at a distance or a bunch of dogs at a distance, I don't know who they are. I ask her to come back, we go in, we kind of reassess the situation, kind of a thing. And I ask her to come back. And if I am getting nervous about the group of dogs that I see approaching or whatever is approaching, if I start getting nervous, oh my God, the speed at which she comes back is not even like, I'm so grateful for it, right? People say, oh, this is such great recall. It's not at all. It's her realizing that I'm nervous about something. And the two of us are a team now. If I am nervous, she's not second guessing me for a second. She's like, I do not need to reassess the situation. If you yourself are nervous, I am, sign me up. I'm on the nervous bandwagon. I will go inside. I will assess the situation later. So I think that's the other part of the connection bit also. Even if I feel anxiety, I think I need to find a way to show her that you're okay. It's just me who's
Yeah.
struggling,
Yeah.
but you are okay.
Yeah.
I wonder if there's a way to do that. Having said that, and now I'll tell you what Turid would probably say is trust your dog more.
Yeah.
And quite honestly, I must say that every time I've decided to take that leap and trust little bit more, I have only been rewarded and pleasantly rewarded. So,
Mm.
so far, I have not regretted trusting the dog a little bit more, but I don't want to be
Mm.
irresponsible either, right? And I don't want to go against who I am. So I want to do it in my
Right.
own kind of a cautious way. But I think that's what I would urge everybody to do, is to work towards that a little bit, see how do you put yourself in a position where you can take that leap just a little bit more. Uh, okay, right? We've been talking about these ideas of um, co-becoming and co-creating. The reality that's there between you and your dog is created by you and your dog. It's not individually created, right? The dog is ready, and you are ready to see that the dog is ready, and the dog is in ready to work with you. Is a dual thing. It has to
Yeah.
click.
Yeah.
And you'll hear the click. If you're ready for it, if you're open for it, you realize that this is possible, you'll hear the click, right? And with, for instance, with separation anxiety, I've seen a lot of people not able to see that till they have their own safety net. So
Right.
typically, it boils down to you having identified who your sitter is. That also plays a big role for the beginning of that.
Oh, for,
Until you don't find that person, you don't feel ready. Your brain will find reasons for not starting
correct.
this exercise, right? And you will justify it, because there is no way you won't find reasons. Your dog is anxious, you're anxious. The second you start getting anxious, your dog will be anxious, and you'll point and say, see, he's not ready. It's you're creating that reality, you're co-creating that reality. But when you have the person who's going to be able to not just in your case, I think even in some of the other cases that I've seen with separation anxiety, it really boils down to that, having found that person also. Your dog never seems to get ready before that person arrives. It's not the other way around.
That is so accurate, Sindur. That is so, so accurate. I mean, I feel like you're describing our exact situation.
Because
Yeah.
it's not just yours, right? I've seen this.
Yeah.
Anybody with the Bach's way of dealing with it, who's tried to deal with separation anxiety, the moment of readiness has only arrived after, all the stars have aligned, right? The person has arrived, the situation has arrived, you're in the right place in your life,
Yes.
kind of a thing.
Totally,
Oh
yeah.
gosh, if I put this video out with me talking about the stars like this, that's it. I'll no more have any clients. Already people ask me if I do dog communication and I have a hard time explaining. No, that's not what I do.
Oh gosh. Oh
So,
gosh.
all right. Any other topic you want to touch upon? We have just 10 minutes. So, I will talk about this because anyway, this evening we're going to be talking about it in the conclave. Um, yes, the idea of play and the idea of appropriate play. This is something that came from the last live session, and I thought that that's an interesting one. Um, how do you feel about your dogs? Do you feel like all of your dogs have appropriate play? Have you seen inappropriate play?
Mm, I've seen play that I find inappropriate. Whether it's actually inappropriate, I don't know.
Mm,
And the reason I'm saying that is sometimes Luna and Jojo get into this little bit of a roughish play,
mm,
maybe.
mm,
And the only reason I find it inappropriate is because Jojo gets extremely triggered after
mm,
that, and so does Snow, right?
mm,
But I've also seen, like, when we went to the farm recently without any dogs, and that was the first time I got to see, well, in a long time, how without really interfering and without the dogs being completely um cognizant of us being around. I mean, we were not in their face as such, right? We were quite a distance away. And I saw them play this kind of rough play as well, right? And the only difference that I could really kind of notice is that after that, whatever few seconds of rough play, our house is so small. There's no place to kind of walk away and shake it off and
mm,
kind of unwind, or
mm,
get your do your pees and do your sniffing, whatever, right? Which we
mm,
saw the other dogs do. It was like rough play for a few seconds, and then all of a sudden one of them is like, yeah, okay, I'm done with this. And
mm,
then the other guy is like, yeah, okay, cool. And they just kind of walked away, and then,
mm,
peed. Immediately, that
mm,
was the first thing they did, right? They immediately peed, and then just kind of went and settled in the vicinity of the other dog.
mm,
I feel like that didn't seem inappropriate to me. But
mm,
when I
mm.
see it happen in my house,
Right.
where the choices are so much lesser for my dogs, like the restrictions are so much more in terms of the boundaries that we have in the house,
Yeah.
I feel like that's when it looks inappropriate to me.
Yeah.
I don't believe that it is the act of them playing rough for a few seconds in itself is inappropriate. But in fact, I
But for
believe, like,
your
the
situation, you feel
environment,
like, yeah.
yeah, the environment makes it
Yeah.
so.
That's an interesting one. And another one, while you're talking about rough play, I have a video from this morning, and I will try and add it, on the auditorium as a supplement to this. Um, the dogs, the girls, Chaita, Iti, Yaya, Dude, all of them came up to me, and I was petting them, and I'm very, very excited about Dude because Dude has been very afraid of human beings in general, ever since we moved here. But the last week or so, every time I step out, he's been kind of jumping and shows a little bit of excitement around me. So that fear has
So
gone, and
cute.
it's been, but no touching still. But he jumps from side to side. So of course, I will definitely share that video too. And so I was trying to get him into that excited state because I want to see it. It's cute, right?
Yeah.
So I started kind of exciting them a little bit. So I started kind of petting them, and this comes very naturally to us. This is something we know how to do, is to get them excited, right? We don't have to think twice about it. I don't have to consciously say step 1, step 2, step 3. It comes so like that. So I started exciting them. And what's interesting, what's caught in the video is immediately there was an argument that propped up between Iti and Yaya. it was unnecessary. There's no reason for it, kind of. And they, in the past, in other situations where they come together like that, they don't argue, but they started growling at each other. She got quite tense. It was Iti who got quite tense, and then she turned and growled at dude. She came very, very close to getting into a fight with Iti multiple times. And then I realized that the only way this would resolve is for me to walk away. So I said, okay, fine,
Yeah.
I've done enough damage, I'm walking away.
Yeah.
um so I think our role, when we, if there's anything inappropriate, I think it comes out a lot when we are around. I think their tolerance for each other can be a lot higher if we are not around. Somehow we bring in a different dynamic, and in our presence, um I see that it's that whole, you can't observe something without modifying it kind of a thing, right? I see that play out a lot when there is play and they're aware that you're watching. And if one of them is your dog, I think it really complicates matters. Yeah.
Oh yeah, spot on.
Yeah. So this evening I'll talk to you about Chaita. I see Chaita behave very, very differently for Chiru, around Chiru when I'm there versus I'm not there, and sort of want to bring up what does that mean in terms of, is there an intent to deceive? Is that kind of playing in there? Is it just your presence? It'll be an interesting one to talk about. Okay. All right. We're almost out of time. Anything else any of you want to say before we wrap up this session?
Just and my thoughts were all over the place. But just one thing about like how with all the stories, even starting from the recall, where the thought just keeps on it's there in the back of my mind, where we cannot create this this freedom and versus them being at home. You can, it'll never be the same versus it's just it's a nagging thought that keeps coming up, that like how all these stories about how they just follow you and they chill, like even when we were in a resort, one in Goa. So these dogs were just coming, they were hanging out with you, there's no food involved, nothing. It was just like, hey, hi, they come see you and they go back. But that kind of, I don't know, like I feel like we're never able to create that environment for them within our homes, like how you're seeing now in the farm, because like you have so much space and she's right next to you. She has that like how even when Anushi was talking about the estate, and like she has that ability, she can go explore and come back. I feel, I don't know, that slow paced and freedom are two key points where we are not able to maybe give that so much to our dogs, like who are at home. It's just bothering me, like it's just something that's coming up.
No, you're absolutely right, and this is exactly the kind of point that really got a lot of my thought going, right? And I kind of mentioned that in my book as well, which is, once I remember actually one of the people in my 101 classes, she just started crying. She's like, did I do the right thing by picking this dog up from the street and bringing him into my house? I mean, he lost his freedom entirely. And I don't think the answer is necessarily one way or the other. I think a lot of times, in her particular example, this woman who started crying, the dog wanted to move in. And because he was being abused, so he wanted to escape that and move in, right? So it's not necessarily like a very clear, and I hear like very damaging conversation around this also, with people saying you should not adopt street dogs. That's not true either. I think some dogs do appreciate moving in, and they don't mind trading off some amount of freedom. I think some of the examples of dogs who have gotten themselves adopted, you'll see that they do try to negotiate. They do want to hold on to some amount of that freedom. So they are like, can we please go out at 2 a.m. and return back at 4 or 6 a.m., which is kind of a non-negotiable thing. So I think this is the reason why at the heart of barks, it's repeatedly two things, right? Slow down and choices. Slow down and choices. because I think it's a discussion that we have not had at all. And particularly because a lot of us who live in this part of the world where we see what freedom is, we have not been invited to the table, right, for this discussion. The conversation has been only amongst people who have only seen dogs in confinement. So they've not seen what the dogs are missing out. They've not seen what dogs are giving up, when they become a sort of, in our house pet dogs, right? Owned dogs. What it means to be owned for an individual, for a sentient being to be owned. It is a situation that is not a minor thing to ask for. So us being cognizant of it and saying, and that is at the root of a lot of so-called behavioral problems, right? Limited space, you don't have the ability to walk away, you don't have the ability to deal with this, in a way that works for you. So many boundaries, physical, training based or otherwise, that have been imposed on you. No, and I'm not kind of demonizing the human being here. It's reality, but being aware of that reality. And I think that is why we are so consciously trying to induce choice. And a lot of people don't understand how we are able to affect so much behavioral change with our methods. Our methods seem like nothing, right? But what they don't understand is this, right? We're at the heart of the problem for a lot of these individuals, returning them back to their individuality. And not 100%, we're not going to be able to do that, but to whatever extent that we can, in whatever way we can be so powerful. It sounds so silly, it looks like nothing, and that's all we can do, right? So the best you can do is to say, okay, I don't know whether it's right or wrong for you. I'm not going to assume that I know everything, but I know that you're giving up a lot. That I know. And I will try and see how much of that I can restore. I'm not saying that's the right or the wrong approach, but to me, it has been a more peaceful approach. Like, it brings me peace. I'm like, okay, I can, this I can manage to pull off. My answer is, if you go out, I know you can get ripped up. And she's like, that's my call to take, isn't it? How would you like if your mom said that? Oh, if you go out into the world, people may hurt you, but that's my call to take. And I'd like to do that. But here I am telling her, no, but my heart will get broken if you get ripped up. You may be okay with it, but I'm not. So I'm doing this for myself. So I'm asking something of you, and I'm not going to let you go now, but I will try to see how much more freedom I can give you. At least within my property, I can give you freedom. You don't have to do every little thing based on this one. So, some amount of autonomy, some amount of freedom, and then try and negotiate and talk through it. And please, kind of thing. I think that attitude shift does help. It helps. My presence in the class, I think, was very vexing, because every time we would have these conversations, I would bring up these ethical gray areas, in dealing with animals. I think especially when you're so close to free living animals and you're trying to care for them also, and there is this line between them and our dogs versus, outside dogs. That line is so thin, and it's right there. You can see it in front of your eyes, right? That line. And you're the gatekeeper, kind of. You're allowing animals to cross that line. I think ethical conversations become very difficult. Hard. Very hard.
Yeah.